There's a high chance that the majority of things you believe about Satan are not actually found in the Bible. At least, I found out this was true for myself, and when I actually investigated what the Bible teaches about Satan, I found out that most of my beliefs were wrong. Before investigating what the Bible said, I believed Satan was God's leading angel, but then because Satan wanted to be even greater than God, God kicked him out of heaven along with 1/3 of the angels who were on Satan's team. Satan and his angels then fell to the earth in the distant past. The demons and evil spirits talked about throughout the Bible are these fallen angels. Now, although many Christians believe the Bible teaches all of this very clearly, you might be surprised that most of what I just said is not in the Bible at all. Let's go through the important passages in the Bible where people get the doctrine of Satan and see what these passages really say. First, there's Isaiah 14:12-15, which says, "How you have fallen from heaven, you star of the morning, son of the dawn. You have been cut down to the earth, you who defeated the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Nevertheless, you will be brought down to Sheol, to the recesses of the pit." We are so used to hearing these verses as if they are talking about Satan that we miss the basic context of the passage. In context, Isaiah is talking about how God will save Israel from Babylon, and he then narrates what Israel's taunt will be to the king of Babylon. Right before the passage I just read, Isaiah says, "And it will be on the day when the Lord gives you rest from your hardship, your turmoil, and from the harsh service in which you have been enslaved, that you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon and say..." Then Isaiah goes on to talk about the king of Babylon falling from the high status of being the conqueror to being defeated. The passage continues to clearly talk about the king of Babylon, calling him a man, and talking about how he had conquered various kingdoms. When Isaiah calls the king of Babylon, O star of the morning, the Hebrew word is Halel. When the Bible was translated into Latin with the Latin Vulgate, the Hebrew word Halel, morning star, was translated into the Latin word for morning star, which is the Latin word Lucifer. The word Lucifer is not the name of the devil, but instead is just the Latin translation of the word morning star. In the New Testament, the Latin Vulgate calls Jesus Lucifer, aka morning star, in 2 Peter 1:19, which says, "And so we have the prophetic word made more sure, to which you do well to pay attention, as to a lamp shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the morning star, aka Lucifer, arises in your hearts." This verse is clearly talking about Jesus, and it uses the Latin word Lucifer in the Vulgate to translate morning star, which proves that the term morning star or Lucifer in Latin does not always refer to Satan. Therefore, when the Old Testament describes the king of Babylon as being the morning star, this should not be taken as a reference to Satan. The next passage people point to when talking about the fall of Satan is Revelation 12:9, which says, "And the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old who is called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him." Although this verse is using the past tense, it is likely talking about future events that John saw in his vision. It is common for prophets in the Bible to use the past tense to talk about future events, especially when they are describing a vision that they saw in the past, but which tells about the future. In fact, most of the book of Revelation is written in the past tense. Notice how this fall of Satan occurs after there is a final battle in heaven between Satan and Michael the archangel. Pay attention to what verse 8 says about Satan and his angels. "And there was no longer found for them a place in heaven." It seems unlikely that John would say that there is no longer a place for Satan in heaven if John were talking about a fall which happened in the distant past. This is because Satan is portrayed as being allowed in heaven in passages from the Old Testament, such as in Job 1 and 2 and Zechariah 3. But this verse clearly says that after this fall of Satan, he is not allowed in heaven. This makes sense if the fall is describing future events. Also notice how a few verses later it says, "For this reason, rejoice you heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you with great wrath, knowing that he has only a short time." Notice that Satan only has a short time on the earth after this fall. Would it make sense to say that Satan only has a short time on the earth if this fall were describing events that happened near the beginning of time? It seems clear that this passage is describing a fall of Satan, after which Satan will have a short period of time on the earth, during which there will be a tribulation. Therefore, this fall seems to be describing apocalyptic future events leading to the ultimate demise of Satan. This is in line with some Jewish writings outside of the Bible, such as in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which describe an end-times battle between the forces of good and evil, with the righteous prevailing over the evil ones. There's one more passage that people often point to as proving that Satan fell from heaven in the distant past. This verse comes from the Gospel of Luke when Jesus is talking to his disciples who have just returned from going into the surrounding towns and spreading the kingdom of God. Luke 10:17 and 18 says, "The 70 returned with joy, saying, 'Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name.' And he said to them, 'I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning.'" There are three main ways that this passage has been interpreted. First, it's that Jesus is describing something he saw in the distant past before his incarnation. Second is that Jesus is talking about a vision he had of Satan's fall which took place at some point during Jesus' ministry. And third is that Jesus is talking about a vision he had of Satan's fall which will take place in the future. Most scholars interpret it as referring to a vision Jesus saw of Satan's fall taking place sometime during Jesus' earthly ministry. It is the fact that Satan has recently fallen which leads to so many exorcisms in the Gospels. Satan and his demons are being vanquished as Jesus brings in the kingdom of God. However, Simon Gaither-Cole, a conservative New Testament scholar at the University of Cambridge, argues that Jesus is actually referring to a fall of Satan which will take place in the future. He argues that since Satan is still active in the Gospel of Luke and Acts after this verse shows that he has not yet been fully vanquished, and therefore Jesus is likely talking about Satan's ultimate defeat which will take place in the future. In fact, it seems that Jesus is talking about the same future fall of Satan as Revelation 12, the passage we just looked at. This is because both this passage and Revelation 12 refer back to Daniel 12 when describing this future fall of Satan. Notice how immediately after describing Satan's fall, Jesus warns his disciples not to rejoice that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are recorded in heaven. There seems to be a verbal similarity between this verse and Daniel 12:1, which says, "Now at that time Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise, and there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be rescued." It seems that Jesus is citing Daniel 12:1 when encouraging them to have confidence that their names are written in the book of life. Notice how in this passage, Daniel is talking about a time of tribulation which will occur in the end times. This passage is closely related to the passage we already looked at in Revelation 12, which talks about how Michael the archangel will battle with Satan in heaven immediately before Satan's fall. Pay attention to how this passage mentions that Michael will arise. This verse is only one of a few verses in the Bible which mention Michael the archangel. One of the other few is the verse we looked at in Revelation 12. Also, both this passage and Revelation 12 describe the persecution and tribulation that will occur on the earth. In Revelation 12, this persecution is the direct result of Satan's being cast out of heaven in the end times. Therefore, what we have is a very clear pattern of intertextuality. Revelation 12 clearly refers to Daniel 12 when talking about Satan's future eschatological fall. Likewise, Jesus clearly refers back to the same passage in Daniel 12 when talking about Satan's fall. This makes it very likely that Jesus is also talking about the same future fall of Satan that Revelation describes. By the way, these arguments that I'm giving are partly coming from Simon Gaither-Cole's articles, so be sure to check that out. After looking at each of the main verses that are typically used to argue that Satan fell from heaven in the very early days after creation, I have shown that either these verses are not referring to Satan at all, or they are referring to a future fall of Satan that will happen at the end of the age, bringing about a period of tribulation on the earth. We should be careful about having clear ideas regarding Satan's origins, since the Bible does not actually narrate a fall of Satan taking place in the distant past. Thanks for watching this video, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so that you can keep learning more interesting and unknown facts about the Bible, all while helping this channel grow and reach as many people as possible. Be sure to hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.